All right, my loves, welcome back to the Modern Phoenix podcast. I brought you a friend. I brought you a guest. This is my new Czech bestie, Katarina Polonska. She's going to talk to us today about relationships. So, Katarina, would you mind introducing yourself? And then we're going to dive into all the juicy goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my name is Katarina. I'm a high-performance relationship coach and a gender dynamics social scientist. So I help people with their romantic relationships. I do also do corporate work and help people with their professional dynamics. And within that, I specialize in what I call the behavioral science of attraction. So really looking at what are you attracting into your life on an unconscious level from a relational point of view? What do you need to be attracting into your life to actually be happy long term? And how do you go about doing that? So think of it kind of like behavioral science with law of attraction, working with the subconscious mind and really understanding what are the patterns, what's going on, what are your core wounds, and how are you actually creating dysfunction in your relationships, right? So I specialize in attachment theory. I look at gender dynamics. I look at what's your conditioning culturally, societally, family, and really help people actually recondition their brains to work for them so that they can have healthy, happy, secure, meaningful relationships. And also, just to add to that, I guess kind of one of the main subsets of what I work with is really actually helping people decide whether to stay or go in their romantic relationship. So that was my own dilemma for a very long time with my ex-fiance. I spent a couple of years really kind of unsure. Is it me? Is it him? Is it the relationship? Doing couples counseling, not really knowing where to go and finding myself really frustrated actually with the whole process. And having come out of that experience, I did end up leaving that relationship, obviously, and now I'm married. Actually met my husband like less than a year later. I help people now really kind of figure that decision out, all of which is going to be dictated by their conditioning, by their wounded parts, right? By their limiting beliefs and all of that, and really helping them actually see the relationship clearly so that they can make the best decision for them and know that they have actually put in their all, cleaned up their side of the street, and really they can look back with whatever decision they make with full integrity, knowing that they didn't make a wounded decision, they didn't just jump and run, they didn't stay unnecessarily. They've actually made a very healthy, empowered, clear decision.
Yeah, that's actually, I've been getting that a lot in my practice lately, actually.
Yeah, it's common, right?
It's like the three big decisions, should I quit my job? Should I leave my marriage? Should I become a mom? Those three.
Yeah, and that's actually another thing I help with too. The career question is similar to the marriage question. Truly, like I was working with a chief operating officer of a global bank. She's making way over in the millions and extremely young woman, like she's 45. And she came to me, she was like, it's like I'm in a toxic marriage with my job. Like, got the golden handcuffs, don't want to leave. Where do I go next? But I'm being abused and I'm being mistreated. And
yeah, well, so important and so understandable why so many people are so confused, today on is it me or is it the systems? Is it me or is it the relationship? Is it me? That's like what I hear, the thread pulling all this together. And I was listening to you on another podcast, and I think we share such similar frameworks for getting people to the other side, though we do it very differently, like different modalities. But you were talking about what you just said, like cleaning up your side of the fence, and I'd love to hear more about that because, I had a client, this was like a few years ago, and she was in the should I leave my marriage boat. It was rough. I mean, she was in a really hard spot. And I remember there was a lot of anger and a lot of resentment and a lot of frustration that came up for her, which was like, it's not fair. He's not doing the work. He's not willing to go to counseling. And I feel today exactly what I felt that day. And I said to her, like, we're not doing this for him. We're doing this so that you can feel so fucking clear by the end of what is right for you, that you gave this everything that you had, that you are so aligned, so coherent, that there's no like shoulds in the room, that you've like had an open heart and also a protected one at the same time so that you can make a decision from that place. He honestly, like, yes, it's great. I think relationally, it's great to work on things, but sometimes the first thread, which is why my podcast used to be called It's All Me, which is like the first thread is just being so grounded and clear and aligned and deconditioned in yourself,
100%.
Yeah.
And I think you just hit the nail on the head that is actually the hardest thing, right?
Totally.
I know for myself, like at the time, I had done 15 years of therapy. I was already a trained coach. I was a mindfulness teacher.
Mm.
I had been to tons of retreats. My father worked with people like Joe Dispenza, so I really grew up in that world. And I worked in behavioral science. I was a freaking, regional VP for a behavioral science company. So like, of all people, you would think that this woman can be grounded and figure things out. And I'd also healed anorexia twice in my life. So I was like, I'd like done the work. And yet what I found so interesting was sitting there, here in Vancouver, and I'd be meditating, and like every day that question would plague me of like, what do
Mhm.
I do? What do I do? What do I do? Where am I going wrong with this? Is it me? Is it him? Like, of ruminating. And obviously now I understand I was extremely anxious, and it was actually my gut instinct like firing up and telling me stuff. But I couldn't discern that truth. And it was actually
Mhm.
my own relationship coach at the time, a really phenomenal woman called Lisa Page. And she used to tell me, she was like, you need to get really clear and discern. Are you projecting your past wounding onto the relationship right now? Or are you responding to the
Mhm.
present moment in real time? And I really struggled to do that. I
Mhm.
really struggled, right? Because it's
That
so
sounds
hard.
really hard.
Yeah, I couldn't see like through my own fog. And of course I couldn't see through my own fog because your brain won't let you see what you're not ready to see yet.
Mhm.
And also, I didn't know how much of my own conditioning was playing into it, but I also didn't know the full extent of the truth. So I always say it typically is going to be a kind of a gray area of a combination of the two, but you have still got power to clear your side of the street and to show up as best as you can in the relationship, try and tweak things from a place of inspiring your partner to change rather than nagging and cajoling them, because that's not going to work either, right?
Mhm.
It's a whole reframe. And again, the way that I see it is like, give it a final 6 months, truly, right? Put a time frame on it. Don't drag this out for years. Give it 6 months. Be very intentional with how you are showing up in those 6 months. Clean up your side of the street. That'll take you a couple of months minimum, right? So really take ownership over that. And then really take ownership of how you're showing up with them. And then look for the data points of what do you need to see in order to know that you're actually going to stay. That's what helped me. And actually, it was kind of within that 6 month time frame when the 6 month window came up that I looked and I was like, I really don't think this is enough for me. And I kept surrendering and praying for a sign and really wanting like I kind of needed like a final little kick up the butt to make the
Mhm.
move. I
Mhm.
did get a little kick. I got like a really
Wallop.
terrific kick, yeah. But it was like the clarity that I needed. And it was so interesting how it was right at that 6 month mark. And I was just like, I'd come so far. And even our relationship had been better, but I was just like praying and praying and praying for that clarity. And then I got that clarity so loud and clear that the decision was it was a no-brainer. But I don't think I could have got there without doing that process. And I think if I'd made any decisions sooner than that, I would have regretted it. I would never have known.
Mhm.
And I would never have
Mhm.
got to the place where actually I'm now in a really healthy relationship. And the final thing I'll say to your point with your client, it's always a win-win. To take this approach is always going to be a win-win because you're either going to work on yourself and then up level who you are and then find someone even better, or you're going to up level the relationship. It's a win-win, right?
So true. Yes, I love that attitude and perspective. And thank you for sharing your experience. What I'm hearing when you're talking, what like this word just keeps repeating in my mind, which is waiting,
Mm,
the waiting.
yeah.
I don't find that most modern women have a great relationship
Yeah.
with waiting,
Yeah.
myself included. I'm a projector in human design. And so the strategy, they call it the strategy of the projector, is to wait for the invitation. And when
Oh
I
yeah.
first discovered that, for years, my whole assignment, when I was like really reckoning with myself in different patterns or whatever, I was like, am I waiting? Am I being a patient person? Am I pushing past my current bandwidth for time and practicing this other thing that I don't know how to do, which is waiting? And I'm curious how you see that play out because I know in our modern world, we have been kind of primed to expect results and
Yes.
quick, shifts and lightning and all of that. And I'm not saying that that's not possible, but I am also saying I'm always reminding my clients, my family, myself, nature as the guide. Nature as the guide. Okay, some things take time. They
Yeah.
just take time. And I have kicked and screamed against that. And also sometimes if you can just surrender or I don't know, accept surrender is such a triggering word for some people. Accept that that is the natural way of things. That is
Yeah.
actually how we are modeled to operate. Then things shift when you're least expecting it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%, 100%. And I like to reframe the idea of waiting and time as it's less about just waiting passively. You're not just sitting in a
Mm,
waiting to board your flight, right? It's a process.
right,
The waiting's the process of you learning and assimilating new information and embodying a new version of you and integrating and then up leveling a little bit. And then you do a little bit more and you do a little bit more and you do a little bit more. And it's like every little challenge that you experience, whether it's relationship, business, health, is just it's inviting you to go and learn, expand yourself, go and integrate the new learnings, upgrade yourself, right? And I think when we take it from that lens, that I'm just in a process of evolution and I can't rush this. I can't
right,
jump to the conclusion because I'm going to miss out on all of that growth that I have to do in order to get there and be able to hold the result. Because if I just
right.
fast track it, then I can get it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like winning the lottery, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
haven't done that inner work to expand your capacity to actually hold money and appreciate it and work with it, and you
Mm-hmm.
just get given $1 billion or $1 million, whatever, tomorrow, you're going to lose it,
You're gonna lose it.
right? You're going to lose it. So it's
Yeah.
far better to take the slower route, do the
Mm-hmm.
work, get there, hold it, and compound it, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yes, my one of my mentors, Joe Miller, used to say the slow way is the fast way. And when I heard her say it the first time, I was so annoyed by it. I was like, I don't even understand what that means. But
Go
now,
away. No.
yeah, like through living and embodiment work, I really am like, oh, like I'm thinking about, you know, like if you just took a flower, like a fully formed flower, and you just stuck it in the ground. Like, see,
Yeah.
flower. It's like, no, bitch, you got to plant a seed in
Yeah.
the earth. It has to, and then you have to wait. And like, yes,
Yeah.
you're waiting, but no, you're not passively waiting because like a seed in the earth, things are happening, but you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
see it.
The
And it
roots are
takes
being
time and
formed.
it's
Yeah.
growing roots and you got to water it, and then it's going to grow and it's going to take time. And that's how you get your flowers. And then the flower is there for longer. Maybe it's an annual, maybe it comes back every year. But if you just take a random flower, stick it in the ground, it'll be dead tomorrow, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great point. You're not
Mm,
passively waiting, but it's also like showing a little bit of respect
yeah.
to like the natural order of
Yes.
growth and evolution and not
Mhm.
capitalism's idea of growth and
Yeah.
evolution. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
human beings, nature, not robots, machines,
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
quickly
Yeah.
producing and multiplying.
Yeah.
So, can we talk about childhood wounds?
Yeah.
Let's talk
That
about
little nugget. That little
Let's
nugget
talk
of a
about
topic.
this little bomb I'm going to drop of childhood wounds. Because this is something that's been really interesting, like in my marriage, the last 5 years, like there have been seasons where we've done some couples coaching work. And
Mm.
I found it to be such a beautiful, like, investment in and devotion
Yeah.
to our marriage and our
Yeah.
family and our life and everything that we're building. Something that came up in those coaching sessions was this understanding, like bringing the unconscious to light, which is
Mhm.
obviously like what you talk about a lot. This understanding that like when I am triggered and he is triggered and we are in a fight, usually I am projecting my childhood wounds on him and his childhood wounds are coming up and those are being projected at me, and it's wild. It's wild to me how this plays out in relationships. Like, to give you an example, I was raised by a woman who was very like control, discipline. Rushing is such a trigger for me. Like rushing, I hate being rushed because I literally feel like for 17 years it was just like I was rushed and disciplined and there was order and all this stuff. My husband is like he likes order. He's a Capricorn. He likes spreadsheets. He
Yeah.
we got in a fight one time where I was like, babe, we still have time to get there. He's like, I hate being late. I literally hate being late. Why don't you understand this? If I'm on time, I'm late. I need to be early. And I really, I really heard him that time because I just didn't understand. Because
Yeah.
to me, being on time is being on time. But to
Yeah.
him, being on time gives you the risk that you might be late, and it's so upsetting to him that he gets so grumpy. He needs to be early, right? And so his childhood stuff is literally the opposite of mine, right? I guess if you can just speak to this or whatever that brings up for you, like how our childhood wounds show up in relationships and our opportunities for healing and also
Mhm.
cleaning up our side of the fence.
Oh, where to start? I don't even know where to start. Other than I honestly believe that the bulk of your relationship It's like the dating phase is unpacking your wounds and getting a place to be ready to even receive a relationship. Then you get the relationship, and most people think, I've arrived.
Yeah.
It's all good. That's what I thought. I remember when I got engaged for the first time, I was like, I've made it through the wilderness.
Yeah.
Made it. And I got there and I was like, wait, what? What is this? Because it actually got so much worse for me, right? It's like that commitment happened and all of my stuff came up. And
Totally.
I remember sitting there being like, but I've done this. I've done
Mhm.
this. I've done like the mother wound. I've done the father wound. Like I've done
Yep.
the blah, blah, blah. I've done the plant medicine. How the heck is this still coming up? And I really do believe that in your romantic relationship, it's almost like you need to get to that place of feeling safe and vulnerable and loved by somebody else for your entire system to relax and all of your crap to come up. It's why we have the power
Yes.
struggle phase, right? I love talking to people about the power struggle because I'm like, look, you have the honeymoon phase, right? Everything's lovely. You're flooded with hormones. You've got your little rose-tinted glasses. You think that they are the bee's knees and they're perfect and you love them. You want to marry them. You want to have the babies. Everything's amazing. And then you go and do all of that. And then guess what? The hormones wear off. You start to feel safe with them, meaning you stop putting on your makeup at like 6 a.m. before they wake up with you, right? You stop like going to the gym so much and trying to work out and get abs for them. Like you just relax, which is a good thing. It's a good thing.
Right.
We want you to be relaxed and not to be putting on a facade. And then you relax. And then guess what? All of your little creepy demons, and I don't even like calling them demons to be fair, but like that's kind of how they show up, right? All of those little wounds of yours suddenly feel safe and able to come up and actually be addressed. And it's almost like they're coming up and they're like, mommy, like, daddy, like, listen to me, listen to me. And so pretty much everything that happens in the power struggle phase, pretty much most of the things that happen throughout the evolution of our relationship is going to be based on our core wounds. It's going to be based on our conditioning. Why? Because that is just how your personality has been formed. I can talk about the subconscious mind and how all of that, life's really bad here. I can talk about the subconscious mind and how all of that, how it happens if you want me to go there. So high level, between the ages of 0 and 8, your brain is like a little sponge. The brain waves haven't even fully formed. You've only got the theta waves going. You're in a light state of hypnosis, right? And that's again how humans develop. That's the beauty of being human. And so everything that you see around you, you are absorbing and you're making it about you. Every single little freaking thing, right? Your parent comes home and they're angry every night because they hate their job. Well, guess what? You're going to make that anger about you. You're going to take it on and think that it's about you. And you're going to make your own little childlike conclusions around it because children have an egocentrism, meaning that everything that they experience, they make about them. And so you start thinking, well, this means that I'm bad, or this means I'm not good enough, or means I've done something wrong, or maybe I'm defective. And so all of these little thoughts and conclusions that happen on repeat, they become the filter through within which you see the world, how you see yourself. Right now, what we do know is that, and there's so many different data points in this, but there's anything from kind of 200 billion to 200 million, depends on who you ask, but bits of data at any given point around us. And it's our filters that are really deciding which bits of data we're taking in, right? So you are taking in different bits of data to what I'm taking in based on your conditioning in your childhood, based on my conditioning in my childhood. That means there's not going to be any objective reality. Everything's subjective. And so someone who's walking around feeling really miserable, I used to have a client here who used to walk around being like, no one wants me. The economy is terrible. There's a recession. There's always a freaking recession with this guy. The economy is terrible. I can't get a job. I'm like, you're literally a multimillionaire. Like, what are you talking about? You live in a penthouse and you drive a freaking Ferrari. Like, how the heck are you complaining about money? But it's never enough for him. It's never enough, right? So all of these different kind of perceptions in him that it's never enough, that he's not good enough, they are what's impacting how he sees the world. Very different to how somebody else would see the world. And so all of that to say that when you grow up, when you get into a romantic relationship, those filters start to hurt you because it means that you're seeing things differently to your partner. And it means that you might not be seeing it actually as accurately as you could be. It also means that there's a lot of kind of unaddressed stories, unaddressed wounds, unaddressed experiences that never really got like closure in your childhood, right? You might have felt really neglected in your childhood, but they never really got addressed because you were a baby and you never had the skills to actually talk about that. So when you're in that romantic relationship and it starts to come up because it's how you see things, it's how you see the relationship, and it becomes a problem because your partner doesn't see it that way and they're really confused, and it starts to become something you talk about, it's a golden opportunity to actually address it, to go inside, to look at it and be like, where the heck is this coming from? Oh, this is coming from when I was 3 years old and, dad got a job abroad and blah, blah, blah happened. Maybe I need to go back and revisit that and through different modalities, heal that wound so that I stop seeing things through that old, outdated lens. And that's really what the power struggle's about. So when people get into this phase in their relationship where they're arguing, things aren't working out, they can't see eye to eye. It's like, you did this and then you did this. From my perspective, it's like, great, you're at a really golden opportunity in your relationship where all of your stuff is coming up and you have all the opportunity now, assuming you're in a safe dynamic, to actually go and unpack it, to go and challenge it, examine it, do the inner work, get the therapist, get the coach, whatever you need to do to really unpack and dismantle and heal those broken stories so that you can see your partner, you can see the relationship, you can see yourself and your life in a much more clear, healthy, and productive light. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. Thank you for the high level breakdown. I love it. And it's reminding me that one of the challenges when we have been in coaching is she would ask us to verbalize what we would love each other to do instead of what they were doing in whatever scenario. And, I relate to you a lot because I also am like, oh, I've done the mother wound. I've done this. I've been in therapy since I was 18. Like, oh, I'm like, I can get a little cocky, especially as a partner. Like I know everything. I've done I have no blind spots, which is just crazy, like so obnoxious. And I apologize, but it was really helpful for me because that question caught me. I was like, all I'm doing is I'm pointing out the thing that he is doing over and over and over and over. Like, this is the problem. I have diagnostic evidence and this is it. And so for her to ask me that question and for it to be so challenging was a beautiful, humbling opportunity to go, the fact that this is so difficult to answer tells me that I have been so in my blaming mind and like ruminating and, better than thou attitude. Then it became this beautiful practice for both of us where we would be, having, and I mean, we have a pretty great marriage, but, just normal stuff. But so even if it wasn't that heated, I would catch myself. I'd be like, I'm doing that thing. I'm very good at talking. Shocking. Like I have a podcast. I talk for a living. So I'm doing that thing. I'd have to stop and be like, what do I want from him right now? And how can I articulate that? It really changed this pattern in our relationship. And it was so beautiful because it also reflected my work in the world where it's not so much for me, at least anymore, about why is this happening? It's what is the resource that is needed? What do you need to feel safe right now? What do you need to feel, resourced or okay, or like you have permission or a break or support or whatever it is in this moment, and making that like just a life practice everywhere. And so I'm curious how you see that playing out or how you shape those questions for couples.
100%. Yeah. You've hit on something really important, right? Which is beneath every conflict, beneath everything that you do is a need that's trying to get met.
Yes.
Just remember that rule, right? Like your subconscious mind, whether you're in the middle of a screaming match with your partner or you're cleaning your teeth, your subconscious mind is doing everything in its power to keep your needs getting met. When you're cleaning your teeth, you're getting a need met. When you're in a fight with your partner, you're getting a need met, right? It might be a need for connection. Who knows? But the key thing is like, can you drop down beneath what they're not doing, what's not getting done, and drop down into what is it that I actually need right now? What is it that I feel? Where is that feeling coming from? And what is it that I would need to feel better, right? And I just love, like, if we can all take a moment to really drop down and get clear on that, and even thinking like, what does my partner need right now? 9 times out of 10, the argument is stopped in its tracks and you're back to having a normal conversation, right? And I think the icing on the cake is, well, it's not even the icing on the cake, it's actually kind of like the butter that makes the cake. But like, if you can really understand that your needs are probably going to be different, they might be similar, but they're probably going to be different in the moment to an extent. And you might not even understand your partner's needs, right? Your partner's needs might seem a little bit irrational, or they might be like, well, why do they need this? That's not your problem. The same way that what you need is not their problem. You're allowed to have your needs, right? It's your problem insofar as like you have a duty, if you're in a monogamous committed relationship, to try and help them with it. But it's not up to you to decide, is it wrong? Is it right? Are they Are they,
Oh, right.
I'm like, right, you don't get to decide that. I
Right.
was telling a couple that I was coaching here, and oh my goodness, they kept going into the whole thing of like, well, he said this and she said that, and this, that, this, that, this, that. You're wrong, you're wrong. And I was just sat there and I was like, well, you're both wrong. You're both
Yeah.
wrong, you're both right. Like, I'm gonna just throw it out there. I was using this example of an argument that actually I had with my husband the night before. And it was 10 p.m., we're both tired. I mean, any argument that happens after 9 p.m., good luck with it, because it's just not gonna go well. And I remember like my husband telling me that he was hurt and what he needed. And I remember sitting there being like, I literally don't understand. I don't
Oh
understand
my God.
how you are hurt. I'm hurt, right? Like I couldn't contemplate. I literally, my brain was just like, I don't get it. But that's not up to me. It's not up to me. End of the day, that's what he feels. So I'm gonna have to give him that, and I'm gonna have to give him what he needs, even though, yes, takes a bit of like ego being pushed down and like
Mm.
bit of pride. And I really think that the more that we can, this is kind of like the gold standard of relationships. The more that we can move out of a scarcity, competitive, I'm fighting for my survival mentality with our partners of like, I somehow have to win this. And for me to win, they have to be wrong or I have to be right. And actually move to a model of like, there's enough to go around. There's enough to go around. And we can both be right. And we can also both be wrong about this. And actually,
Mm.
they're allowed to have what they need. They're allowed to want what they want. And so am I. And
Mm-hmm.
there's enough to go around. No one has to lose here.
Yeah.
We're not in a competition. We're not fighting for resources here, right? That's such like a scarcity mentality that really bleeds into our relationships
Mm-hmm.
that needs to go. Again, that's, from childhood being in your little pram, like buying for your parents' attention. There's enough to go around at this point. We're all adults.
Mm.
There's more than enough.
Yeah. That brings up for me this idea that, because when you said like it's your job to give it to them, there's a
Mm.
part of me that's like, I don't have to. I don't. I can
No, you
choose
don't.
to. Am
Yeah.
I willing to? But then I'm really, which of course, like I mean, I do want to. Like all the people that I love, I want to give them what they
Mm.
need. And also, I think what can kind of help with that stubborn teenage part of me is
Mm.
when I just remember, like, well, I get to give what I want to receive in return. So it's not
Yeah.
like you're just like giving, which I think a lot of women have a very confusing relationship with giving and
Yeah.
receiving. It's really out of balance
Yeah.
and highly preconditioned to look a certain way. And so, this idea of giving when you're not in the mood to give, if you can, like you said, drop down and understand that also, like, you get to be in this partnership where you also
Yeah.
get to receive
Oh, for
this
sure.
thing
Oh, for
that you
sure.
want to give. And that's, that, I don't know, that collaborative energy and relationship, I think is really missing in our communities, in our partnerships, in our
Yeah.
culture,
Yeah.
this idea of right and wrong. I am endlessly fascinated
Mm.
by this paradigm that we're operating in and how much it's hurting couples
Mm.
and families and friends and I mean everybody. And I'm like, how I can see how we got here. And I definitely have like the paths out that I see and how I've helped myself and helped my clients. But I'm curious how that shows up in your work and how you work with that.
Yeah. I love everything you're saying. And I personally actually think that it is our job to give our partner certain things. If
Mm,
if we are in a marriage or if we're in a contract with each other, right?
mm,
I think that's kind of one of the things that it's okay to have a job in life because ultimately you chose to marry this person or you chose to be in a relationship with this person, a committed monogamous relationship, right? That comes with a contract. You also get to break that contract if you want to. So you
mhm,
do have freedom here. But I think that the less we can view this as like something that's a burden and that we are rebelling against, and more as like this is actually a privilege. And as
mhm,
part of my contract here, it's the same way that, if I make $3 million, I kind of have a job to be responsible with it,
mhm,
right? I have a job to try to look after it, to nurture it, to invest it, to let it grow. It would be very
mhm,
sloppy for me to take that money and then be like, yeah, I don't really feel like looking at it right now, right? Because then
mhm,
someone could take it or it could be abused or like, I think that there's a responsibility with caring for our partner's heart that ultimately it is a privilege, but it also means, to your point, that they have a responsibility to look after ours.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, like when I was in that argument with my husband, I remember it was like 10 p.m. I wanted to go to sleep. I was crying. I was feeling really crap. But at the same time, I'm like, here is the man. I always come back to this when I'm in a conflict. I'm like, here's the man that I'm like devoted to and I'm married to him. And even though he looks like a demon to me right now, and I don't feel it, I ultimately have to remember that, like, yeah, he's a vulnerable person right now. He has his own needs. And it is my job to try and be as loving and caring as I can to him, even though it's freaking hard. It's
Yeah.
freaking hard, right? It's not saying it's easy. It's like this kind of duty and responsibility that I think we have to each other to
Mm-hmm.
be loving partners, to be loving neighbors, to be a loving community that we don't have enough of right now, right? Because I
Yeah.
think that especially in Anglo-American cultures, we have such an individualistic society,
Right. That's what I
right?
was just thinking, collectivist.
Yeah, it's like so individualistic. And it's like, well, I don't want to do that. And I don't want to do this. And it's like, well, frankly, you probably don't want to do any of this stuff, and nor does
Yeah.
anyone else. And then we're just gonna be like freaking like savages, like killing each other with spears,
Mm-hmm.
fighting for the
Mm-hmm.
last thing. Doesn't make any sense to me. We know
Right.
from like history that humans progress further when there is collaboration, when there is community, when there is
Mm-hmm.
generosity, right? Like it's such
Mm-hmm.
a talent and skill to have that I think that we do need to bring that to our romantic relationships. And I don't know where it got lost along the way. I'm gonna throw capitalism to blame, but
Mm.
but like somewhere,
Let's.
right? Somewhere it did get lost along the way. Because I agree with you. I remember it was a few years ago, I was at work in a corporate job that I had, and a girl came into the office and she was like, I went to the weirdest wedding. And we were like, oh, why was the wedding weird? And she goes, and it was here in Vancouver on the West Coast. And it was like somewhere like deep in like the Vancouver Island where, it's a little bit more woo-woo and kind of hippie up there. And she was saying how she went to a wedding and it was two very like, it was like very conscious relationship. And,
Mm-hmm.
and the couple, like basically their vows were that I'm just gonna look after me and you're
Mm-hmm.
just gonna look after you. And
Mm-hmm.
we're just gonna each do our own thing and come
Mm-hmm.
together freely. And I remember sitting with that and being like, on the one hand, I can see how that is really conscious and like, absolutely, you are responsible for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. But at the same time, I was like, then why are you even getting married? We've kind of demonized this idea of responsibility for the other to a really
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy extent where I was like, you can do both. I can be fully
Yeah.
responsible for myself
Mm-hmm.
and have a
Mm-hmm.
responsibility for carrying my husband's heart.
Ooh.
You do both, and that's a freaking win-win relationship, right?
Yes. Yes. It's almost it's like, oh my gosh, this is bringing up so much for me. I think about this a lot in respect to my extended family and
Mm,
also my in-laws,
mhm.
and like any family, it's not perfect. And, when you get in-laws, it's so interesting because they're often nothing like your family, and it brings up all more of the childhood stuff.
Yeah,
And it's like, this is now your mother and your sister. And you're like, but I have a mother and a sister, and
yeah,
that's already
bring life up.
complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now let's throw this in. And especially in the more recent years, I land at this place of like, yeah, me and you. And that gets to work. Like, how do I honor this extended family and I guess the word responsibility doesn't feel great to me. And I think this is like a little bit of like semantics here. Like every person's going to have like the vocabulary that resonates for them. But it just feels like, yeah, I have this commitment to my extended family and like, let's say my in-laws, because I love their son. And it's not my job to judge them or find all the ways that we're different or separate myself from them, because really I belong to this tribe, and it's messy sometimes and it's confronting sometimes. And also there's a lot of love and there's a lot of, grace and family and support, and it's both. It's all of it, and it's messy. It's really messy.
Yeah.
And the deeper I am able to be with the mess of, let's say, that relationship, the more I can see that I am growing, because it's not just like you or me or him, him or whatever. It's like,
Mhm.
no, we all belong to each other in different ways. And we do have this like unspoken contract. And I could pretend it doesn't exist and pretend that you guys aren't important. And I have my little life over here, across the country, and I'm married to your son, but that doesn't mean anything about you. But by honoring my in-laws, I'm honoring that lineage. I'm honoring ancestry. I'm honoring, our children's lineage, and it's all one tribal communal family. And I think
Yeah.
that I can speak for Americans with the hyper individualism, especially. Like, we've really lost our ties to our ancestors. We've lost our ties to our lineage. We've lost our ties to belonging, to community. And there's so many reasons for that. And I understand why. And I also think it's easier to just be in our little castles, isolated from each other, and be like, well, I'm right. Or they said that thing, or they believe this thing that is what I don't want to belong to that. But it's like, but the truth is you do, because your child is the grandchild of his parents. And so are you really just going to like chop that off at the root? Like, how do you be with the mess of ancestry? And I don't know. I just think that's part of the work
Yeah. Yeah.
in this time.
Yeah. As you're saying it, it's so interesting, like, because I'm similar to you. And like, if I look at my ancestry, it's wild. Like, my husband's from Barbados, right? And you
Mm,
look at the lineage of Barbados, I'm like, slavery. And then you look at like, well, he doesn't know where he's from. He has no
mm,
idea where he's from. He's like, I don't know if I'm from like Latin America. I don't know if I'm from like Africa. Like, he's like, I don't know what country my ancestors are from. So he's got this kind of like big, like kind of like generational memory gap, right? From
mm,
a horrible capitalist outcome. I look at my family and I'm like, well, I've got family, I'm like half Russian. I'm like, that's
mm,
a whole mess back there, right? And then now they live in Ukraine, and then I've
mm,
got other family in Israel, which is another hot mess. And then I've got like the Slovakian side. And I think like from coming from such a diverse background, and I've lived in like 8 different countries at this point, I'm almost kind of not immune to the differences, but it's like it makes sense that we're all different.
mm,
It makes sense that we all have such different lineages. And to your point, we are all absolutely just one big global family. We only have one home, and it's the planet. And we all fundamentally come from the same place. And so it's like there's a range to the human
yeah.
experience, which I find really interesting. And I'll never forget one of the most fascinating things that I ever did. This was in my academic career when I was doing my master's degree. I studied a lot of like Anglo-American feminism, right? That was like one of the big things that I was really reading and researching. And from my perspective, it was like, well, this is right, right? And I remember when I used to live in Dubai. So when I lived in Dubai, I got really passionate about like emancipation of women. And I remember trying to do a research project to like emancipate women. And I remember like doing all these interviews, and they were like, we don't need emancipating. What are you talking about? Like, we're fine. We're fine. Go to Iraq. That's where the women are more activist. And I remember thinking, well, that's really interesting. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to go closer to home. I'm going to go and study like Russian women's emancipation, because having,
Mhm.
grown up partly in Russia, I was like, I know there's a lot to do there. So when I began digging into that, and I was like looking into what is it that women want, I remember thinking, well, this is weird. Why do they want this? It was like they don't want abortions. They don't want to work. They want to stay at home and have families. I was like, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. Like, what?
You're not free.
Yeah. And then I remember studying the history of this and being like, oh, like in the 90s after the Soviet Union collapsed, a load of Anglo-American women like came over there and like, we're gonna help set you free. And the whole thing was like, no, 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 no. We had abortions. The Soviet
Mm,
Union like mandated them. We had tons of abortions. We don't want any more. Thank you very much. We don't want to
mm,
have to go into the public sphere and have to work. We want to stay home and have a private life, because again, Soviet Union, communism, we never got to do that. So I remember thinking it was so interesting how there's so many different varieties of experience out there. And then I went on this like whole quest where I was like, I wonder how other people view the Anglo-American landscape.
tell me, how bad is it?
It was just fascinating. I remember like specifically looking at like Japanese feminism, and how there was like this view of looking at American women and being like, this is barbaric. Like, not only are you mutating your bodies with plastic surgery and Botox and all of this like awful stuff, but like you don't rest when there's a menstruation cycle. Sorry, you like grind through and work. And then I remember looking at other cultures, and I remember being like, wow,
Yeah. Oh my
right?
gosh.
So interesting. And so to me, it's just like there's such a range. There is no right and wrong. I mean, I believe in fundamental like, liberal truths of like, peace, freedom, love, don't kill
Yeah.
people, equality. But like, yeah, it was just really interesting. And again, very long-winded thing to say.
I love it.
When we come together with another person and we look at their culture and their ancestry and their background, I do think it's really important that you have enough value similarities. I do think that, like, from a religious point of view, that was a really big issue with me and my ex. From a religious point of view, you want to be aligned. From a cultural point of view, you want to be aligned with my fundamental values. But there's just a range of
Yeah.
humanity that we kind of have to accept. And we're just learning and growing about what it is to be human and how
Yeah.
weird the world is.
So weird. No, I so appreciate that of course you just did some casual feminist research in Dubai, like said nobody ever, but
No, no, not in Dubai. I started it in Dubai and then I went to Oxford and did it there. I don't.
whatever,
Yeah.
blah, blah, the same thing. Okay. Anyway, but I think maybe like a thread that I can pull to bring
Yeah.
this to a landing is this idea, like when you're with people who are different than you, whether it is your partner or your
Mm.
extended family or like a stranger, what I heard at the end of what you just said was like, what is my intention?
Yeah.
Okay. So now I'm with, my great eh, Aunt Sue, who's my husband's aunt on his dad's side she lives a totally different existence than I do.
Mm.
We don't share a lot of values, but we share my husband. We share my
Mhm.
husband. Okay? That's
Mm.
to me, that has to be enough. And sometimes that does have to be enough, or doesn't. I'm not trying to gaslight anybody into being in relationships with toxic people or anything. But in my imaginary case of a great Aunt Sue, who's the aunt of my husband, I think what has helped me when it has felt confronting, or I'm like, I disagree, or I'm right and they're wrong, or the way that I
Mm.
do things is the right way and the way that they do things is the wrong way, is to just really ask myself again, like, what do I want from this relationship?
Mhm.
Like, what
Yeah.
is my intention? What do I
Yeah.
need? Why am I going to visit this person?
Yes.
Which kind of circles back to what we were saying before. It's so easy to focus on what we don't like, what we disagree
Mhm.
with, what we think is wrong, what the other person has done, and it's so much more challenging to flex the muscle of curiosity and like, I wonder why this person is that way, or what is my intention? Like, could I actually bring some of my own intention to this? Like, why does Great Aunt Sue matter? Why does this conversation with my partner matter? And finding like the meat of that, I find to be more motivating, and it like gets me through more than if I were to be like, I have an obligation, because
Yeah.
and I agree with what you said. Like we do in some form, like all have an obligation to each other. And I also just think like thinking forward focused of like, well, why does it matter? Does it
Yeah.
matter to me?
Yeah.
How can I make it matter? Like what are the things that we share? It's a beautiful skill to nurture in
Yeah.
ourselves, and
Yeah.
it just applies everywhere.
100%. 100%. Yeah. It's like to this thing of, I love the question, like, for what purpose am I doing this?
Yeah.
Right. For what purpose? For what purpose am I trying to prove that I'm right here? Why? What
So
am
I
I?
can be right.
Yeah.
Because that will feel good.
Yeah. But that's when it's like, well, no, actually, maybe it's enough just to know that I know that I'm right. Right. Maybe it's enough just to know my own opinion and know my belief system and be okay with that. And maybe I don't need to have other people agree with it. Like
Hmm.
maybe that's enough, right?
Yeah,
Go back to the wound of not feeling enough.
totally.
We need to look at that, right?
Totally. And if it's not, then why? Like, how can I get curious about why not? And
Exactly.
what would make it be enough?
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
okay. This has been lovely as usual. Thank you for all your beautiful insights and your really smart brain. And can you tell people how to find you and your work in the world? I know you have a masterclass. I know you've got a podcast. Tell everybody who's going to want to go and find you and keep in touch how they can.
Well, first I was going to say they should find me on a patio with you having an after today. So
Yes,
that's what I want to be doing.
that's
Um,
where we're going to be, folks.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, if you go to my website, www.katarinapolonska.com, that's KATARINAPOLONSKA.com, you will find a link to my 20-minute free masterclass, which is all about the behavioral science of how do you decide whether to stay or go in your romantic relationship or your career. And I also am very active on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a great place to find me. I post on there 2 times a day with tons of educational content. I love to engage with people there. So just find me, Katarina Polonska, on there. You can do a search. I'm also now on TikTok. Guess what?
What? Why did you go to TikTok and not Instagram so we could hang out on our
Oh, a week
Instagram
ago.
patio?
A week ago. I bit the bullet. I went on there. Still figuring it out, but come find me there. Hang out with me. It's kind of lonely right now. Katarina.Polonska. And then on Instagram, I'm just Katarina Polonska. So my name across all the social media platforms, you will find me. Also YouTube as well is where my podcast tends to be these days. So obviously it's on Spotify and Apple and all of the other platforms as well.
Amazing. And we'll put that all in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time. I would like to acknowledge you for being just such a brilliant and curious and empathetic human in the world, and for working so hard to try to make sense of this crazy mess called being human with other humans is so hard.
Shows humanity.